you're going to see where it says closing disclosure. On there is going to be the date they issued it, and that's going to be your date of closing, it should be, and your disbursement date. Some states will do like a, you know, like a dry close or something, but we always try to fund the same day unless it's super late, and then we fund the next day. So it's going to have the date of your closing on there. It's going to tell you who the title company is, the property address, and the sales price, all on that left-hand side. In the middle is going to give your borrower, the buyer of the property, the seller of the property, and who is the lender. And then on the right-hand side, it's going to give the client the terms of their mortgage. In this case, it's a 30-year purchase with a fixed rate, and it is a conventional loan. So that will be, you know, kind of outlining to the client. They should know all this information pretty much from the start of when we did this, but this is our final document to, you know, record with the property sale. Okay, when we scroll down, in the middle there, you're going to see what the loan amount is and the interest rate. So in our example here, our borrower did not put down 20%, so we'll talk a little bit more about that. But right there in the middle, it gives you the loan amount and our interest rate. The principal and interest is $761.78, so that's not their total payment, but that's just the principal and interest based off the interest rate. In the middle there, it's going to say prepayment penalty. In this example, there is a prepayment penalty, but reality is nowadays we really don't see any of those, and there is no balloon payment. So when we scroll down a little bit further, we're giving our projected payments. So in our case here, we do have private mortgage insurance on because they were not putting 20% on. So that mortgage insurance between the first and seventh year is $82.35. And then they're going to have the estimated escrow. So that could be your taxes and insurance. And it gives your total payment of $1,050.26. On the right-hand side, you're going to see years 8 through 30. This is when it drops the PMI because you have enough value in the property. So then their payment does go down from that PMI dropping in the future. So when you go to the next box, it is telling you that you have the taxes, HOA is no, so there's no homeowners escrowed in this. That's going to be paid separately. So, you know, sometimes buyers are like, well, I thought my payment was, you know, $1,350 because I have $300 in HOA dues. That's actually paid to the homeowners association. So we have to calculate that in as your overall operating expense of that property, but that would be a different payment to outside the mortgage. So that's why it's clarified there. So when you come down here, this is where people get a little crazy, I should say, upset. They don't understand. In our example, we have the closing costs as $9,712. So when you look over a little bit further, it does say it includes the closing costs for the loan of $4,694. So your loan closing costs are going to be lower, but then there's other things. And in this example, we'll go through it a little bit more, but there is a capital contribution to the HOA. There are HOA dues. So there's other costs besides just loan costs that the buyer is going to incur. So that's why they try to give all of the costs that it is to get into the house and not mislead the client that, oh, you only need, you know, $4,694 in closing costs. There's other things that they have to pay for. So when we have our down payment, any credits, any closing costs, their cash to close, they would be wiring to the title company is $14,147.26. Okay, and page 2 kind of starts breaking out what our costs are. These would be pretty, I think pretty similar to what we would see, you know, here in Lee County or Collier County, wherever you might be selling. The loan origination is box A. In this example, they're paying a 1/4 of a point, and that's probably to get their interest rate of 3.875. So interest rates aren't always no points. Sometimes people might want to pay a little bit of points to get a lower interest rate. Right now in the lower credit score buckets, investors are charging a point to 2 points if you're in that like 620 range. So that is all to get your interest rate. The application fee and underwriting fee, those are lender fees, all in box A. So that pertains to the lender. If you go down to section B, and these are fees that the borrower did not shop for. So the appraisal fee, they paid outside closing. So you're going to see that 405 way over to the right. So in all cases, we pay for the appraisal up front, and then we would mark it on this closing document that they paid outside of the closing, and then that would be the credit. The credit report fee is $29, and I'm assuming that was paid somewhere else or whatnot because it's moved over on that box. You just can't see the very top. And then the other fees are when we pull a flood cert, things like that, or tax certifications. The borrower doesn't have the ability to shop around for that cost. It is what we, the lender, is charging through our third-party vendors. If you go down, services borrower did shop for in section C. So we have the ability to pick whoever you want to do the pest or the survey. And then the title company, in this case, the borrower could have shopped around for a title company. So that's why we have the shop for put in there. So those would be a little bit probably higher than we see right here for title insurance in our county, but still an example that those are things that the buyer is paying as their closing cost. And then in section D, it just adds up A, B, and C for most of the closing costs there. Section E is the recording fees. In our section of town here in section E, you'll probably see it more like 200 to 250 for recording fees. They charge per page with the county, so the title company will go ahead and figure out how much that might be. Section F, prepaid items. So whenever we're closing on a loan, we would want to pay our insurance upfront for 1 year. And then you're going to have prepaid interest. So from the day that you close till the end of the next month, the beginning of the next month. So you're going to see we closed on the 15th, and the next month, May 1st, those are days of interest. So 1744, we would collect all those days of interest, because if we closed in April, then our first payment would be in June. So we're closing and then they're collecting interest in between there. Property taxes, we are escrowing. Depending on when your tax bill is collected, you're going to be putting in enough escrows for that tax bill. And then when you go down to G, you're going to see where we're escrowing for taxes and insurance. So we're piling money into our escrow account, so when the next time the insurance is bill is due the following year, and the tax bill, whenever it is due, would have enough money inside of the escrow account to pay these items. When we scroll down to section H, this is the example because our property in this case has a HOA. So we would also go ahead and include that. So it could be their capital contribution, 500. You know, we'll see in a condo, it might be 1,200. Some of them are close to 2,500. So this is where when you're buying inside of a homeowners association, you'll have some fees. And many times the HOA has you do some sort of paperwork. So in this case, it's labeled as a processing fee. We generally don't put the home inspection fee, which is on the H03 line. But in this example, they did put the $750. Sometimes we might add it if we are using a lot of seller contributions and we want to eat them all up. We'll put it on there so the buyer could get some of their money back. And then in this case, the home warranty for $450 is being paid by the seller. And then the real estate commissions are listed paid by the seller. Okay, and then the optional title insurance. So the next section I was just adding up those E, F, G, H. So when you add up the top lines and the bottom lines, is when you come up with the 9,682. Okay, and when we scroll down, calculating cash to close. So in the very beginning of the loan, you have what's called a loan estimate. So that's the first thing that you disclose to the buyer. So this is as much information as we have available at the time that you start your loan application. I always like to tell people it's not perfect. You know, we're just starting. We're giving you the best guesses based on the best available information. So that's where you're going to see the loan estimate right there. So when you see the final next to it, those ended up being the actual costs. So in our example, you are seeing where the actual total closing costs were $9,712, and then that credit report, the 2980, I thought it was paid at closing prior to closing. You're seeing that negative number, so they paid that before they got to closing. And then you're going to see where their down payment, which is whatever percentage they're putting down with whatever their deposit is. And then in this case, you were given some seller credits. And then whenever we have some adjustments and other credits, it could be like the tax prorations or things like that, or they gave them a credit back for the title insurance. So those will see some little bit of movements, and that's where you're coming in with the final of the $14,147. Here's where it gets a little crazy for some people. The summary of the transaction. So when we say the total due there up at K, so that is your sales price plus your closing costs that we calculated with your prepaid items and things like that. So that's where you're coming up with it. And then when you look down, the seller paid for some of the HOA. So that's kind of where you're coming up with the $80. So when you take the due, the loan amount, and L is $175,615. So that's where you're taking your loan amount, you're giving your deposit, you're giving your seller credit, the rebate from the title company, and then your seller adjustment under there. So when you take that down, you'll take that number, the 189,762, and minus off the loan and the things you've paid, the credits and whatnot. And that's where we're coming up with the cash to close. So right in the top there in the middle is kind of where buyers can get a little confused, because they're like, well, why am I paying all this? But then you have to also let them know that you are getting some of the seller credits on this section. Any questions?
No, we're good.
Okay. All right. So scrolling down. Up just a little bit. All right. So in this example, we're not always going to see what's exactly going to the seller, but the seller is netting $64,414, and then the buyer is having to come to closing with $14,147. Okay, scroll down. And this section is just some clarifications about the borrower's loan. So in our case, this loan is not assumable. It's a conventional loan. It does not have a demand feature, so you're not going to be like, hey, pay me tomorrow. The late payment, if you pay between the 1st and the 14th, you don't have any late fee. But if you are paying after that, you are going to have a late fee. And borrowers need to understand, until you hit 30 days, you don't have a late payment. If you haven't paid within 30 days, your credit report is going to reflect a late payment. Our loan does not have any negative amortization. We don't really see any loans like that anymore. Your lender may accept payments that are less. So in this case, they may accept a partial payment. Sometimes people might do a bi-monthly. So there could be options after it gets to servicing in order to set up your payments. I don't think there's anything else on. Okay, scroll back up so we can look at the right-hand side. Oh, escrow. Go down. Escrow account. Okay, so we will have an escrow account, and this just kind of breaks out what our escrow account is. So we're escrowing for property costs, we're escrowing for insurance, initial escrow, to come up with what your monthly escrow payment is going to be. So with your principal and interest and your escrow payment is where you're coming up with that $10.50 earlier. All right, and nothing else pertaining to us right here. Right. This is the big scary thing that when you put all your payments in with the loan amount, with the finance charge, you're going to be paying back $285,803. So that's the scary number that when people are like, oh my gosh, that's how much it costs to borrow this, you know, $162,000, the answer would be yes. If you don't pay anything down on the principal, you don't make extra payments, that is the cost. So when you go down to the APR, the interest rate is 3.875, but an APR takes into account all the costs that were associated with the loan. So when you take the interest rate of 3.875 with the costs, that is 4.174 average. So some people will think that's their interest rate. It's the cost of borrowing the money when you average it out over that 30 years with the cost. And then the total interest paid is the total amount of interest you will pay over the loan term is 69%. So you're basically 30% is principal and interest, and 70% is just the interest on it. Principal is 30%, interest almost 70. Let's say, go back up and see what's on the right side here. Okay, appraisal. We did have an appraisal, and you did get it at least 3 days before closing. Sometimes you'll sign a document that says you don't care if you get it 3 days before closing, as long as you get it before closing. Contract, you would want to look at everything for making your payments. What happens if you fail to make your payment? You know, you could go into foreclosure. Those are things like that. If your lender forecloses on this property and the foreclosure does not cover the amount of unpaid balance, so you may or may not be liable for the difference. If they do it like in a fire sale, you may have some lawyer fees. So they're just letting you know that there may be some things that occur if you start going into foreclosure. And let's go down to the contacts. So these are all the people on the loan and on the transaction. So the lender could be different than the mortgage broker, because sometimes if we have to broker out the loan, that means I may be sending the loan to Ficus Bank and I'm just the broker handling the transaction, and I would obtain some sort of fee for that. And then we have our 2 realtors on our transaction, and our settlement agent is the title company. And the buyer would go ahead and sign this at closing that they were accepting of all the things on here. So there should be no surprises on this closing document when it finally gets to the closing table. That's the purpose, because back in the day, there would be surprises at the closing table and buyers would be like, you never told me that, and they felt like they had to sign it. So now we go ahead and kind of give you this document, usually at least 2 times, from your loan estimate to your initial closing document. But there'll be other adjustments that you may also see along the way and have updated fees along the way.
That was super awesome. I'm gonna go ahead and unmute and see if anybody has any other questions. If they'll let me unmute them.
Okay.
Oh, thanks, Candy and Troy. And I know Crystal's been running around and doing stuff at the same time. Oh, there she is.
Yes, I am here. I'm working with a contractor at the same time. So yeah, I've been in and out doing the best I can.
Awesome, awesome. Do you guys have any questions for Dawn? That was really thorough. That was really, really good.
Oh, thanks. I've been doing this like 15 years now, so I'm like, I feel like I've got my eyes closed and I'm working on some documents. But yeah, I think it's, you know, clients, they just get kind of confused. And I think the best thing is to always just kind of keep them calm. And if you're not really sure what you're looking at as the realtor, be like, hey, let's get, our lender on the line. Let's both look at it. I just think I try to always reassure people along the way. So that way it's not a big alarmist type situation. And I think it's also important for you as agents to make sure that the buyers clarify with the title company over the phone where they're sending their funds. So due to wire fraud, I always tell the people to make sure you call them back and have the correct, routing numbers and things like that. I've had clients get emails and send the money to which was not our title company.
Yeah.
So
we've had it happen here. Thankfully, not recently, back when it really all started. So,
yeah.
But especially when you're new, and if you haven't done that many deals to realize how serious it is, it happens frequently. And I don't know if you've heard, Dawn, I know I've heard that at the beginning of Corona, they were seeing a huge jump in wire fraud.
I hadn't, but it does not surprise me because everybody kind of went and hid in their office and they're like, oh, I'm just going to email you, and things got intercepted. So does not surprise me whatsoever. Yeah. But I just, I think it's just making sure that our figures are where they need to be. And I personally work with a lot of first-time home buyers, so they are down to their last dollars, pennies in the bank. I'm not kidding you. So for me, having it as tight as possible is, very important. So as a lender, I would ask you, have you gotten any insurance quotes yet? Does the seller know how much the flood insurance is? So there's things that I try to do up front, so we make sure that we have enough cash to close, because that's always been an issue. And I don't know if you guys are aware, that's why I do a lot of down payment assistance also to help soften all those costs for the buyers.
The queen of down payment assistance.
I have been busy. When JJ was saying about her 55 closings, I think I now have like 30 loan apps going. It's just insane. But we're all
great.
Very excited. Yeah, thankful, blessed. That we're still able to keep moving forward during all this.
Absolutely. Okay, so I think we will let you off the hook with that now that it's not storming at your house anymore.
Thanks. Just a little stressed to start off the meeting.
I know, right? No, but I think you did fabulous. So if everybody is set, nobody's got any other questions, we'll go ahead and let you go.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.